Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating and honestly kind of paradoxical idea. What if our darkest, most sorrowful feelings might actually be humanity's absolute greatest superpower? I know, it sounds a bit out there. We live in a world that is constantly telling us to just smile, move on, and focus on the positive, right? But what if we're actually losing out on something profoundly beautiful and completely essential by constantly pushing away our melancholy? Today, we're going to explore how sorrow, longing, and all those bittersweet experiences of life are actually the hidden gears driving our capacity for love, for creativity, and for deep human connection.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with a visceral, just unbelievable story. The year is 1992, and the city of Sarajevo is under a brutal, devastating siege. The power is completely cut, buildings are just pockmarked with mortar shells, and the only sound you usually hear is gunfire. But on May 28, a man named Vedran Samailovic, who is the lead cellist of the Sarajevo Opera, does something literally unimaginable. After 22 people were tragically killed by a mortar shell while just lining up to get bread, Samailovic put on his formal white shirt and black tails, he carried his cello out into the rubble, sat down on a plastic chair right in the open square, and played Albinoni's aching, exquisite Adagio in G minor. With snipers in the hills and bombs dropping all around him, he sat there and played this heart-wrenching music for 22 days straight, one day for each fallen civilian.
Hearing a story like that, we really have to pause and ask ourselves this core question. Why respond to bombs with bittersweet music? Why, in the face of absolute destruction and horror, did a musician instinctively fight back not with combat and not with upbeat, cheerful pop tunes to try and raise spirits, but with aching, beautiful sorrow? Well, his cello sang out a message that these people were not just combatants or victims. They were humans, flawed, beautiful, and aching for love. It reveals this deeply ingrained human instinct to meet the sheer tragedy of life with a profound yearning for something better.
Okay, let's dive into this by turning the lens onto you for a second. Ask yourself, are you bittersweet? Do you tear up easily at touching commercials? You know the ones. Do you actually find comfort or even inspiration on a dreary, rainy day? Do you feel strangely elevated by sad music rather than depressed by it? Or maybe you inherently see the happiness and the sadness in things all at once, what some call seeing the tears in things. If you're nodding along to any of this right now, you possess a very specific sensibility. You are wired to recognize that light and dark, the bitter and the sweet, are forever paired.
This brings us to a massive clash between two fundamentally different ways of looking at the world. American culture, and honestly much of modern society, is built around a sanguine choleric mindset. This is what you might call the exhausting tyranny of positivity. It demands that we be constantly forward-leaning, tough, cheerful, always ready to fight the good fight, right? It essentially tells us to hide our tears. But historically, many cultures deeply revered the bittersweet, melancholic mindset. This mode is acutely aware of passing time, of human fragility, and of the profound beauty hidden within life's fleeting nature. Now, this isn't about being permanently depressed. Actually, scratch that. It's not about depression at all. It's about having a deeply authentic response to being alive in a flawed world. And it turns out even the most creative minds struggle with accepting this. Let me tell you an amazing anecdote that proves just how much we underestimate this melancholic mindset. Back in 2010, celebrated Pixar director Pete Docter was making an animated film about the emotions inside an 11-year-old girl's head. Yes, we're talking about Inside Out. He easily chose joy and fear as main characters, but he really struggled with sadness. He grew up thinking crying was uncool, and the animators originally drew sadness as this dowdy, blue, just unappealing character. 3 years into making the movie, Docter thought the whole thing was a failure. He couldn't figure out what actual purpose sadness served in the story. He literally almost quit his job, spiraling into preemptive mourning about losing his treasured colleagues. And it was in that exact moment of despair that he had a massive scientific and personal realization. The crucial realization, which came thanks to psychology professor Dacher Keltner, was that sadness is absolutely not a flaw. It is not a useless drag on our psyche. Sadness is an evolutionary bonding agent. As Keltner so beautifully puts it, sadness is about caring, and the mother of sadness is compassion. Think about it. When we experience sorrow, it strips away all our everyday defenses and it brings us together. It signals to others that we need help, and it allows us to deeply, genuinely connect with the pain of the people around us. Docter took this to heart, completely rewrote the movie to put sadness in the starring role, and it went on to win an Oscar.
And this brilliantly illustrates that this isn't just poetic philosophy we're talking about here, it is hard neurobiology. Deep within your nervous system, when you see someone in pain, your vagus nerve, which is one of the largest nerve bundles connecting your brainstem to your body, literally fires to make you care.
Meanwhile, your anterior cingulate cortex, the part of the brain handling complex human tasks, lights up in the exact same way whether you are getting pinched yourself or whether you are watching someone else get pinched. Finally, the periaqueductal gray, located deep in the center of the brain, drives the primal instinct to nurture our young. We are physically, biologically hardwired for empathy.
So, you might be wondering, how on earth did we get this incredible wiring? If we look back chronologically, we see that Charles Darwin is famous for the phrase, survival of the fittest. Except, fun fact, he didn't actually coin that phrase, and he believes something very different. Darwin's true concept was much closer to survival of the kindest. Here's how it worked. As early humans evolved to have massive brain capacity, our infants had to be born prematurely, meaning they were highly vulnerable and completely helpless. To ensure the survival of our species, we had to evolve an intensely powerful compassionate instinct. Our horror at seeing suffering evolved directly from the biological mandate to decipher the cries of our babies and protect them at all costs. And this instinct naturally radiates outward, making us completely capable of caring for total strangers in distress.
Which brings us to what philosophers call the paradox of tragedy. Think about it. If human nature is supposedly just about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, then why do we deliberately seek out tragic art? Why do we love rainy days, or listen to mournful music, or read tearjerker novels? It's because we don't actually welcome tragedy itself. Rather, we seek out the sublime emotions that accompany it. We are intensely drawn to art forms that speak to our capacity to care. When we weep at a beautiful sonata, it's not just a release of sadness, it's a profound, shared experience of common humanity and transcendent love.
To label this incredibly complex feeling, we have to look across different cultures and eras, because English doesn't quite capture the whole shebang. The ancient Greeks called it pathos, a yearning desire for something wonderful that we can't quite have. C.S. Lewis called it Sehnsucht, an aching, inconsolable longing for a more perfect and beautiful world. It is the deep recognition that light and dark are forever paired. Now, in our modern world, we tend to view longing as something passive or even weak, but historically, it was understood as a fiercely activating force. It is the desire for communion. It's exactly what drove Homer's Odysseus to cross the seas, and it's what drives us to seek out beauty in our everyday lives.
So, what does this all mean for us? Well, when we embrace this bittersweet mindset, it fundamentally shifts our perspective. Allowing ourselves to truly feel sorrow actually deepens our natural empathy. It becomes the engine that drives our desire for justice, pushing us to connect with outgroups and fight for those who are struggling. It catalyzes the creation of incredible masterpieces and pushes us toward innovation, because longing for a better world literally makes us want to build rockets or write symphonies. And finally, it fosters profound humility and self-compassion. When you realize that everyone has suffered or will suffer, you stop beating yourself up and you treat yourself and everyone else with a lot more grace. All of these insights are just brilliantly synthesized in Susan Cain's book Bittersweet. And if there's one massive takeaway here, it's that we have to stop treating our longing as a psychological defect that needs to be fixed with toxic positivity. Longing is not passive. It is not weak. Rather, it is the ultimate gateway to belonging. It's a bridge that connects us to our shared humanity. When we feel the ache of a beautiful piece of music, or the ache of missing someone, we are tapping into the exact same evolutionary mechanism that tells us we are built to love and care for one another. I want to share this soaring, truly transcendent thought from the 13th century Sufi poet Rumi. In a poem about a man who despairs because he constantly prays and longs for connection but never hears an answer, he is eventually told, "This longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union." I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Rumi is beautifully reframing longing not as a symptom of a missing piece or a broken heart, but as the very cure itself. The fact that you care enough to ache means that you are already connected. The longing is the compass that guides us home. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this lingering, provocative question to chew on. Is your longing actually the return message? The next time you find yourself deeply moved by a rainy afternoon, an old photograph, or a poignant piece of music, I want you to remember that you aren't just feeling sad. You are experiencing the absolute best of what it means to be human. Embrace the beauty of your own melancholy, because it just might be your greatest superpower. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and never stop reaching for that perfect and beautiful world.